Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Elanhub Live. Today, we have a most important guest. He's coming here to come share with us some of the things we know about him and some of the things that we are not sure about. And then, secondly, he will speak to very important issues plaguing Nigeria and River State, in fact. But before we delve into the conversation today, please do well to follow Ellen Hub across all platforms. I'm just going to click them up for you now. So Ellen Hub, we're available on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then you can also find us on YouTube. Also, remember to visit our website at www.ellenhub.net for news, interviews such as this one, important stuff that you find useful every day, inspirational content, entertainment. If you want to laugh, you want to cry, whatever you need, we have it right there for you. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dr. Sarah Chidiberejo. If you've been on social media, you may have seen images like this. Let me just play this short video for you. You see, houses submerged, farmlands consumed, and that's owing to flooding. People have died, over 500 and counting in Nigeria. In River State, it is crazy what is going on. Today, we've invited the best person to come share with us the relationship between flooding and climate change. Someone asked me yesterday, why are there floods everywhere? It will really interest you to know that some persons don't know why. And today, we've made the effort. We've brought in someone who is really knowledgeable about it, who will come tell us what is responsible for this, and then what do we need to do to stop experiencing this sort of heartbreaking experiences. I would like to welcome now my guest for today's conversation. His name is Professor Precious Nwobidi, EDE. Hello, Prof. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Sarah, for having me.
Thank you so much. I'm really, really excited today. You know how long we've wanted to have this, we've been wanting to have this interview.
I
Finally.
know.
I think there's no better time than now. Look at what's happening all around Abuja. It's crazy. In River
Yeah.
State, people are dying, houses, properties. I can't even begin to explain it. But thank you for showing up. I'm really grateful. How's your day been?
So my day has been very fine, and I've been looking forward to this broadcast.
Yay! I'm really excited to hear that. Okay, so I'm going to share with some persons because before we talk about flooding, we want to know you a bit. Because you know what? I asked a couple of students and then some of your work buddies about you. And three persons used this word. And I'd like you to explain it to us at some point. They said he's an enigma. You don't see him any and anyhow, but he's in all the relevant spaces. He knows all the important people. If you fall into Wahala, he may not really walk into the scene, but he knows people to talk to help you resolve it in a safe way. And I was really intrigued by the word enigma. But let me tell my audience now. Professor Precious N.A.D. is a lecturer with River State University. He is a consultant. He is a researcher, and he has a wealth of experience in the following areas, which is why, of course, we've invited him today. It's really vast with research methodology, geography and environmental management, urban and regional planning, air pollution and emission modeling, and climate change. He is the current head of Department of Geography, and he also serves as the Director Academic Planning, River State University of Harcourt, Nigeria. My mouth is aching. Prof, how do you manage all of this? And why do people describe you as an enigma?
Thank you so much. All the things you counted that I am into are actually things I have been acquainted with right from the first day I enrolled as a student in the university. My first degree was in geography. My master's degree was in climatology. And my PhD was also in similar area, climate science. And during this period, during the period of my first degree, I was into urban development and planning, but since my original discipline, geography, allows me to go into another specialization during my master's, I abandoned that area because most first degrees are actually not specialist areas. I merely wrote my thesis there, so that is not sufficient to make me an urban specialist. But I have a couple of articles on urbanization, especially about Port Harcourt, which I regard as my laboratory. More importantly, my later works have dwelt on climate as well as emission modeling, because emissions are gaseous pollutants and they are propagated in the atmospheric medium. I consider myself well qualified to go into that. And as a result of that, when in 2016 there was a suit in Port Harcourt and nobody knew what to do about it, without blowing my trumpets, I will say that I was the first to conduct a scientific investigation into the origin and causes of soot, how it is propagated, where it is coming from, and what activity is likely behind it. As a result of that effort, the Rivers State government constituted a technical committee to do a proper study of the soot and made me the chairman. That gave rise to a very authoritative book or report. There were over 30 of us in the panel, but what we came up with was so encompassing. We looked at the atmospheric aspect, we looked at the human aspect, what is causing it, why are people into that business, what are their benefits, what is the overall value chain involved in what we later started regarding as fire. And we also went into things like the health effects. I think that is the most important aspect of that work, because to date, I have had 4 PhD graduates who have pushed our findings further beyond what we did by using surrogates like Wistar rats and expose them to this soot phenomenon and say what kind of damage it causes. We predicted cancer effects in the whole of Rivers State, and we surveyed more than 41 health facilities in Rivers State, at least one in each of the 23 local governments of Rivers State. And our findings showed that even within the first 1 year of the soot being seen in Port Harcourt, that was in 2016, that by 2017, people were dying from it, that respiratory tract infection was on the increase, that there were skin problems, and that there were reproductive problems. All those things are out there for you to see, because what we did was to conduct an after and before experiment to see what was and what is. But for today, our focus is on the environmental hazard.
Prof, hold up. What are we talking about? I have a couple more questions about your person. So, I mean, I love the way you've just dug into your work. We did our research. We saw that you've published well over 80 articles, journal articles alone. I'm not talking conference papers or any of those. That's a lot of work. So, were you born a professor, or is this the path you chose? Were you just born and you were like, Professor Precious, anything, or what was the behind story? I know, for instance, that you attended Birabi Memorial Ground, right? What else? How did you become a professor? Why this choice?
Very well. There are 2 things to it. A certain prominent Port Harcourt politician who have made his mark both locally and nationally once said that he became a politician because there was no other job. Well, I am not a politician, but I have a similar experience. I graduated from the university in the second half of the 1980s, 1986 to be precise, and there was no job then too. And all the jobs I got, I have worked in 3 places. I have taught in secondary school, I have taught in a high school called College of Arts and Science, then I'm now in the university. So fortunately for me, those were the only job available. You know, I have not had the experience of coming to work in the oil industry, and I said no. But you see, through the back door, I have done very, very extensive work for the oil industry. If you like and want me to name them, and I've done all those things, right, purely from consultancy perspective, in other words, as an external expert to them. So that is a story for another day. But as to whether I am born a professor, and remember earlier in this interview, you've asked me to explain why I am described as an enigma. Frankly speaking, I don't know the full meaning of that word. And look, I'm not a grammarian. I have searched my head, and the word doesn't occur in air pollution atmospheric studies. So we can skip trying to make me explain what an enigma is. But as to whether I'm born a professor, if I say yes, it will look a little arrogant. But I consider myself a bookworm because right from my early age, anytime I am told to describe myself or what my hobbies are, I find myself saying, I love reading and writing. Sarah, let me tell you the truth. There is no literature textbook that secondary school students have used in Nigeria in the past 50 years I've not read. From Concubine to the works of Chinua Achebe, to the works of Wole Soyinka, to more recent works. I just read them for the pleasure of it. And remember, when I was in secondary school, if you're a geography student, you can't be a literature student. So those things were done out of interest, and they have enriched me. So when I say I'm a bookworm, it is not that I know book, but because I read a lot of book. They are two different things. I have met friends who know book.
You know enough, and now you're a professor.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully I know enough.
I mean, if you were to describe what an enigma is and explain, then you stop being an enigma. So I get it. But remember that you brought in politics. I'll be asking your thoughts on those very soon. But let's talk a little bit about the fun side just before we deep dive into this issue of flooding. I talked to students. I think it was before your birthday and just before this interview. I think 2 days ago or so. And I said to them, "So you know him? Do you know Prof?" And the next thing they said, that man we sabi drive fine car. We sabi. What is cars? Do you know that you're not as popular as your cars? Because the background photos of most images that students take, your car is right there, but they never see you. I think that adds to the enigma status. But is that a love? Is that your own expression of art, or you just collect for fun's sake?
If I was rich enough, I would have owned more cars. Do you know why? Again, that is one of my way of relaxing. Go online and sample cars, the latest features, the latest models. In fact, I have owned 1 or 2 cars that when I first brought them to town, people turned back and said, "Oh, we don't know that these people have evolved to this level." But so that is true. But on a more serious note, let me tell you that one man in my community said he doesn't have money to build house, but if it comes to the one he can use to buy drink for himself and his friends, he has enough. So me too. I must say that there are so many luxuries in life I don't go into, maybe dressing and all those things. But if it is to satisfy that thing I used to do, because even before the time of popular television as we have it today, 24 hours, I grew up before the time of CNN. At least I graduated before CNN came to Nigeria.
Wow.
By the time, in fact, CNN came to Nigeria about the mid-90s, as a there is this communication trend that people used to buy them and you will get CNN free. By that time, I already was on my PhD. So because I didn't grow up that way, I'm used to the hard brick and mortar, hard copies of books. I tell you that I used to buy magazines about car race, about cars, and I used to dream that one day I would drive some of those things I was reading about. And today, I'm lucky to have driven at least a couple of them.
We've been thinking about having a conversation around cars because I know a couple of young people on the Elanhub team and some of my students who really love cars. I'm going to organize something where you guys come and talk about cars. But really, it's really interesting to hear you talk about buying cars as fun. That's not something people think about when they think about lecturers. For the most part, I think people look at lecturers and they'll be like, those people, mean people, sorting, collecting people, poor people. But that's not true. That's
No,
not
it's
true.
not.
Yes, it's sort of
It's not.
personal preference and choices, but it's really nice. I hope you've been enjoying this conversation. I know that a lot more people will go look at this video because it's stored on all our platforms on Facebook and then on YouTube. I'm really excited Prof is here. But now let's talk about this whole issue of flooding and climate change. You've seen the images all over the place. You've seen the photos. A couple of days ago, the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs announced that over 500 persons have lost their lives.
Yeah, it's actually more than that. That's they always underrate distance. But go on.
Yes, and then farmlands, and you see this association between flooding and food scarcity and food security in Nigeria. Already, food is expensive. What is flooding? Why do we have water everywhere? I'm just going to play a clip of the video again for people who didn't see it the first time. These are the images that we're seeing around River State. 4 local governments affected. This is what we find. Houses completely submerged. People have lost their means of livelihood. I mean, it's a lot. So, Prof, please tell us, what is going on? Where is this water coming from?
Let me, before I go into what is going on, let me just mention something before I forget. I have a PhD student who is working on the effect of climate change on rice production in Nigeria. And she walked up to me 3 days ago to say that the largest rice farm in Nigeria, located somewhere in northern Nigeria, she named the size of the farm, and I don't recall the exact thing she said. She said that, do I know that last week, hours after that farm was submerged and swept away by flood, the cost of a bag of rice changed. That the rice she used to buy 25 kg for 17,000 is now 19,000 naira. So that is typical of what Nigeria has suffered this year by way of flood. Luckily for me, in 2012, I was part of a group that looked at the effect of flood in the Niger Delta, because the 2012 flood can only be rivaled by what is going on now. And we learned a lot from what happened that time. Some parts of Nigeria are flood endemic. Unfortunately, that is for more than 30 states in Nigeria. You see, if you look at the map of Nigeria, the first thing that comes to your mind is the 2 rivers that join at Lokoja. And those 2 rivers that join at Lokoja defines the map of Nigeria. They are beautiful, and thank you for putting up that map. So you will see this is in geography, this is what we call a drainage map.
Okay, hold on, Prof. You want one or this other one? So anytime you need any of them,
any of them is okay, but I prefer the first one because of the colors.
Okay.
Yeah, I prefer it because of the color, although the second one is more detailed. But the colors here, the green here shows low-lying areas or river channels. And if you look at it critically, studies have shown that where the 2 rivers meet, that of course, the 2 rivers I mean here is Niger and Benue, that Benue supply roughly 51% of all the water that flow down south to where we are now, Niger Delta, and that Niger supplies about 49%. Now, the River Niger is clearly longer and bigger than Benue, but why it supplies less than Benue is because it has several dams. Beyond the boundary of Nigeria, there is a dam on the Niger. At Kainji, within Nigeria, there is a dam. Still on Nigeria, at Jeba, there is another dam. So these dams create enormous reservoir. So that reduces the total volume of water coming down from the Niger, although it is a bigger river than Benue. On the other hand, the only serious dam on Benue is outside Nigeria, and that's the Lado Dam. But as you just look at the River Benue, you will see that there are big tributaries. The Niger also has a lot of tributaries. For instance, Kaduna is a river. It's the name of a river before it even became the name of a city. So River Kaduna has a dam called Shiroro. And once you make that kind of dam, you can regulate the amount of water that is passing through. But on the other hand, on the Benue, you have a very big river called Gongola. Remember, there was a state called Gongola State. That river is there. It has no dam. There's another river called Donga. It has no dam. There's Castinala. So, and all these rivers are on the same, they're on the same latitude with where you have the Lado Dam. So when rain comes, and there was plenty of rain this year in northern Nigeria, comparable even more than what we have in southern Nigeria. Recall that in 2022, we didn't expect what we call August break to occur in July. July was dry, August was dry, September was dry. Ironically, September has the highest rain in Nigeria, in southern Nigeria, followed by July, and the third is June. But yet, we had so much rain up north, and that is where most of the casualties of death occurred, because the north don't normally receive so much rain and flooding. But the Niger Delta and the south are used to rain and flooding. So it is easier for them to cope even when there are adversities. Now, the two rivers now converged at Lokoja and started flooding Lokoja. It started flooding Lokoja at about the 1st of October, which is roughly 14 days ago. I warned people in the platforms that I belong. And remember, I was the LOC chairman of a conference that ended 2 days ago. In fact, that ended yesterday, because yesterday was departure. Nigeria Association of Hydrological Sciences. I'm a fellow of Nigeria Association of Hydrological Sciences. And this year's annual meeting was held in our university, River State University. It was well attended. We started on Monday and ended yesterday, Thursday. That is 10th to 13th. And this was one of the things we were discussing. But ironically, while we were discussing it, that flood that started around Lokoja and started pushing downwards towards Anambra a week ago, 4 local governments in Anambra were submerged completely and washed away. Many other parts of Kogi, Delta, and Edo, who are on the banks of the Niger, had it. I predicted that in 10 days' time, it will be the turn of the Niger Delta. It is not a big deal that it is so, because that is the usual time it takes for the flood that is moving down from, say, Lokoja to get to the sea. And we are just next to the sea. So you have the Focados, Kenon, and their distributors, like Taylor Creek or Orashi. So you have our brothers and sisters from Orashi. Let's talk about River State now. And our brothers and sisters from Orashi, comprising the following local government: Obebe Mandone, Ahoda East, Ahoda West, Abu Odua. These 4 local governments have more than half of their landmass submerged underwater. I have a friend who is a lecturer and a director in River State University. When I was talking to him 3 days ago, he said the water is now at window level in his house. And you can imagine. When we were holding our conference on Wednesday, somebody who came from Bayelsa told us that he has to rush back to Bayelsa to save his property because his home is under, he had been inundated by the coming flood. And by 2 days ago, that is by Wednesday, the road linking Yanagua and where Niger Delta University is, Amasoma, have been washed away completely. In other words, you can't move from Yanagua now by road to that axis of Bayelsa. That is something that was very busy as a result of students and other businesses that are there. Then that same Wednesday, a friend of mine was driving from Warri. He told me that if you are driving a small car, you cannot pass Okube around Ahoda West to Port Harcourt. The reason being that the water has now climbed the road. By the time he returned in the evening of the same day, he told me that it was with some effort that the pickup they were driving was able to do that. By yesterday, we have started seeing videos that only lorries and trucks can go from Port Harcourt to Mbiama or from Mbiama to Kayama, that all those places have been completely submerged. Now, I am discussing just the problem. So the point now is, what are the solutions and how should people react and cope with this thing? First and foremost, this flood was not an emergency.
Okay, hold on, Prof. Before we go into solutions, are you saying, therefore, that it's just because of the dam or the rivers, these are natural occurrences? Is that nothing really that could have been done all these years?
Yeah, what could have been done was easy. Lado Dam is in Cameroon, and by international law, they cannot open their floodgates without warning Nigeria. If they do, they could be liable for damages. So they always warn Nigeria, sometimes weeks ahead, because they have the rainfall record that will swell the reservoir behind the dam. So since they have that record, they will know that their reservoir will overflow. You know, if they don't release the water behind the dam itself can collapse. And if the dam collapses, the effect on Nigeria will be 10 times what it will be when the release is controlled as it is being done now. Many people don't remember that. And because Cameroon is not a Nigerian territory, they feel that Cameroon is punishing Nigeria. But studies have shown that about 100 or 150 kilometers from the Lado Dam into Nigeria, that the flood attenuates. In other words, by the time you get to a town called Newman in Taraba State, the effect of the release of flood from Lado Dam diminishes very drastically. What is causing flood in Nigeria is within Nigeria, and that is from Gongola, Katsina-Ala. Katsina-Ala, don't mistake it, don't confuse it with the Katsina State. They don't share any boundary at all. Katsina-Ala River is somewhere in Taraba State, you know. Then Dongo River. That these three rivers combine. Gongola takes its source from Jos. Katsina-Ala and Donga take their source from Mambila. And Mambila is an extension of the Cameroonian mountain range. So these are the source of, and all these are in Taraba State. These are the sources of the flood we have down the river. And in this year's case, it wasn't just the Cameroonians that released water. Kainji Dam released water. Jeba Dam released water. Shiroro released water. They were all in the social media. That of Shiroro, if you release water in Shiroro, River Kaduna, it enters the Niger. And if it enters the Niger, it will pass through Lokoja. It will pass through Kayama. It will enter Orashi, because the Orashi is a distributor of the Niger. Taylor Creek is a distributor of the Niger. The flood you have around Yanagua and the one leading to Niger Delta University are caused by two rivers, Taylor Creek and Non River. You know, then the one you find around Yanagua is by Epie Creek. Epie Creek is also connected to Taylor Creek. So all these things are interconnected. As a matter of fact, some parts of the Niger Delta, like Bayelsa and parts of River State, around where you have Orashi, are actually floodplains and floodways. That is naturally, these are the ways through which flood is discharged when the banks are full. So even though this year's one is on the extreme, but annually, people from this area experience a measure of flood.
Okay, so what needs to be done? We can't keep experiencing this. There has to be a way out. No solutions. We know that, yes, there are flood banks and the rivers and all of that, like you've explained. But what is the solution?
I will give you a background to the solution. 10 years ago, I was in a conference overseas. Coincidentally, that was Wuhan in China. It is more famous now for things other than just conference. And At a stage in the conference, the question was raised, how do mankind cope with sea level rise? They said, let people from Netherlands come and teach us how to live in an environment that is below sea level. In other words, the people from Netherlands had all the solution and they've been using it for many years, for many decades. That prompted me in 2015 when I had the chance to tour certain countries in Europe. I spent 2 weeks in Netherlands. There was no serious place we didn't go to. Utrecht, Eindhoven, Rotterdam, Amsterdam, and many other places I cannot remember. Even one had my son in EDE. If you log it on, you will see it. You know, it's a very busy terminal. So we were in all these places. One thing I noticed, even without being somebody trained in this area, was that a typical street on Netherlands has an adjoining canal. And this adjoining canal is something that is deliberately constructed to protect the communities from flood. So people in Netherlands have 3 means of transportation that are very dear to them. One is their car, but that is the least important. But their boat comes on very strong. Then, of course, bike, the Dutch, as they are called, they are the #1 bicycle riders in the world. But the bicycle riding is not the focus of what we are discussing. We are looking at that network of canal inside cities, you know, that run parallel to road networks. Those things were deliberately constructed because the places those road networks and houses are built are below sea level. And this is typical of Bayelsa State and parts of Rivers State. The question now is, what can we do? Because the technology and the know-how are there. When the Institute of Flood Erosion Reclamation and Transport, today called Institute of Geosciences and Environment in Rivers State University, was formed, the university and Rivers State government sent a lot of people, some of them are still in the institute today, sent a lot of them to Netherlands. People from Netherlands, we are teaching in that institute, or sorry, we are researching in that institute. I remember my office, the office I occupy there now, is owned by, was previously used by a certain person called Mr. Dix. You know, he's from Holland. And what they were coming here to do was to teach us, or to make us realize that the plenty of water we have in Rivers State, then, which is now Rivers and Bayelsa, is a blessing and not a curse, that their own people have annexed it. Today, agricultural export from Netherlands is over $30 billion a year. But agricultural produce from the whole of Rivers and Bayelsa may not be up to $500 million. So when people are able to know their weaknesses and tackle it, because that is why God created us the way he did, with a brain, you know, you will see that what people see as adversity could be a blessing to them. In fact, the people of Netherlands have developed themselves so much in managing flooding and sea level rise to such an extent that in 2004, when you had Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, the US, it was the people of Netherlands that the United States of America ran to come and help them rebuild their dikes, firm them up so that it can withstand future storm surge, you know, that caused the damage in America. And let's not forget, if only 500 people died in Nigeria as a result of 2022 flood, it is not too bad. Not that death is a good thing. I tell you that there are some countries this will happen to, and those countries will be crippled. We have seen it even recently last week. There was a hurricane in America that caused a lot of deaths in their hundreds. So even developed countries are not immune. But what we should realize is this: the cause of what we are experiencing is beyond one country. It is climate change. This is climate change in action. If there's any person who doubts that the climate is changing, that there will be a July without rainfall in Port Harcourt, or a September without rainfall in Port Harcourt, let him go and look at the data for this year. because it's unusual. If there's somebody in Kano or Jos or any other part of northern Nigeria who doesn't know that rain can fall every day to the point of taking lives and destroying property and farmland, as it happened this year, let him go to northern Nigeria, he will say it. Climate is changing. And part of the reason why there is this level of damage to property and life is because we do not fully understand the direction that change is taking place.
Fantastic. I mean, my head is already full. I've learned a lot already, and I'm sure everyone who is watching and those who will watch in the future, there's a lot to unpack here. But first, I want to ask you, Prof, before we delve into a little bit more about climate change, why do you think this is the case then? Why is the government not listening? Why are they not taking people like you seriously? I mean, you warned people. You predicted these changes. If you were able to predict, and for instance, the government takes people like you seriously, they will be able to do something. You refer to Netherlands. You've talked about the institute in the Great River State University, where lots of work have been done, and I'm sure articles have been published. Why haven't we started implementing these things? What is going on? What is responsible?
Thank you so much. Many people became professor in River State University as a result of their knowledge of the problem of water and environment in the Niger Delta. Examples are Professor Teme, Professor Abam, Professor Nga. These people are even stronger in this area than me because they are squarely within that area, whereas I occasionally go into that place because the starting point for hydrology is climate. Because the water you see anytime you show pictures of places inundated come from the sky, not from the ground. You know, so as a result of that, we have knowledge. As academics, we can only speak about it, earn credit for publishing and earn promotion from it. We cannot untwist anybody, talk much less government, to adopt whatever we propose. I remember the day Professor Temer gave his inaugural lecture 20 years ago, and he was telling us how to control erosion in parts of all River State, Rivers and Bayelsa, and all the works he has done, how he slept in the bush for several weeks, conducting experiments on all these things. So the knowledge is there. But as to why government is not taking them serious, well, with due respect to government, because they are my employers, do they really take anything serious except that it yields immediate political profit? I don't think so. I don't think so. If we live in a society where those 8 local governments in Bayelsa, because all the local governments in Bayelsa are in trouble, where all those 4 local governments in River State put themselves together and say this coming election, somebody must come and tell us that he will do something to stop this annual menace, or we will not vote for him. They will try it. After 4 years, if the person fails to do anything, they will discard him and take another person. But in our own case, the flooding and its effect is not even an electoral issue, both at the national and state or local government level. It is not an electoral issue. In fact, most victims see this as acts of God. They do not know that elsewhere in the world, conscious effort have been made to control flood, to mitigate it, and take advantage of it. In our just concluded conference, the keynote speaker, Engineer Derefaka, who is the managing director, Niger Delta Basin Authority, headquarters in Port Harcourt here, said that, look, why should Nigeria allow millions of gallons of water to pass through its territory and empty into the Atlantic Ocean every year, while there are many places seeking for water to do irrigation in the same Nigeria? That there are technology, there are means by which you can harness that water that is about to enter the ocean and lost, and take it back to places and parts of Nigeria that need it. If you can pipe petrol or crude oil from Niger Delta to Kaduna to refine, you can also pipe water. Whereas when you pipe crude oil, people may sabotage it. Water, what will they sabotage water for? So sometimes you will think it is impossible. But let me also mention that right now, Nigeria has concluded an arrangement to pipe gas from the Niger Delta, not just to Kano, but from Kano to Morocco. And remember, about 10, 15 years ago, Nigeria piped gas from Escravos to Ghana and other West African countries. And that pipeline, West African gas pipeline, built by Wilbros, is still functioning till today. You know, so piping water or annexing that water that is ravaging places like Rivers State, Bayelsa State, Anambra State, Kogi State, trapping those water and utilizing them where they are needed is not an impossible feat, and it can still give us a lot of value added benefits that can make this country become a better place.
Well said, Prof. Well, I mean, you've dropped plenty sound bites for us already. This whole conversation about piping, the examples, and I'm sure people are listening. We're going to do our best to share this content because as much as we hold the government responsible and how you've talked about making flooding an electoral issue, this is really important. And I think this is where the media comes in. And I'm really happy that Elanhub, we're doing the Lord's work, we're doing our little. We've brought Prof here to come talk to us. These are the experts. These are the people who should be on the board. These are the people who should be telling us what to think, how to do it, how to bring lasting solutions. I'm just using this opportunity to call out the River State government. I'm doing my job here as a journalist, but at the same time, I'm advocating. Please reach out to your professionals. Reach out, listen when they speak, when they hold conferences. Don't go sit down in the corner. Fund it, support them, listen, and make change. Nobody needs to die from this, Prof. And like you said, 500 is too much. Nobody should die at all because there is a solution. All over the world, people are talking about cancer, right? And that's because there's no cure. But for this one, there are lasting solutions. So thank you so much, Prof, for all you said. But now let's talk about the role of organizations like NISA, NIMET, NEMA. Are they doing the right thing? It's the same that once it happens, governments will release money. For instance, River State government, they've released 1 billion naira for relief, for palliative, for people who are suffering. We've seen the images, people are going out there and giving out food. But is that what they should be doing? What else should they be doing?
NIMET, Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NISA. Then there's another one, Nigeria Integrated Water Resources Commission. Of course, NEMA is the agency that is into relief, you know, whereas the other agencies, NIMET and the others, will predict that, look, rainfall will be so this year, and which they did. I have the documents. NISA also does something very close because they are the Nigerian Hydrological Agency. Then the other one is integrated management. In other words, things shouldn't stand alone. If you have plenty of water, it may be useful in agriculture and things like that. You can also look at the potentials of harvesting water for electricity production, as in damming, as we have in many dams in Nigeria, Shiroro, Jeba, Kainji, and so on. Yes, all these agencies, we are present in Port Harcourt in the just concluded workshop, you know, but I don't know. I can't speak for their management. Some of them serve the role of early warning. Early warning means NIMET should be able to look at the atmosphere and say, look, in 2 months' time, unexpected amount of rainfall will occur in Nigeria in so place. If you ask me, they did this year. NEMA will tell you, oh, now that the rain have occurred, the way water is flowing through the channels, places downstream should be careful because water will inundate them. But we as citizens, do we really listen to this forecast? But the answer is no. It is both ways. It is government, it is the individual. Let me tell you what happened in Lokoja. I know this because somebody from Federal University, Lokoja, was at the conference during this week. And I cornered him to say, what is going on in your place? I heard that even your own university is almost submerged. He said yes, that his university was also inundated, part of it, but that those who stayed behind his university were worse off. He also told me that, well, that's their temporary campus, that their permanent campus is better elevated. So he and I now went into conversation as to what is going on, because at least he lives there and he knows exactly what happened. He says the reports, the investigation conducted in 2012 about flooding in Lokoja recommended that people should leave the waterways and the floodplains. And government went ahead and paid compensation so that people will leave those places. What people did was to take the money government gave them, went and secured land in higher grounds, built it, then went back to their old, because the old buildings were not demolished. That most of those who suffered this year's flood were people who have already been compensated in 2012, but who decided that, well, this is their land, their ancestral land, or a land they bought, and they must go back to it. Unfortunately, when we got this information, many of us who were listening to him concluded that these people don't need any pity. But that is not the case across Nigeria. In Bayelsa, for instance, you simply don't have a higher land to go to. That's the truth. I know Bayelsa like the back of my hand, because even this year, I was in Bayelsa just 3 weeks ago, a month ago, So I know the place very well. Generally, Bayelsa is a floodplain because it has all these river focados, Taylor Creek, Colo Creek, all of them. They don't have any highland in between them. So it's unfortunate. In the past, when everybody in Bayelsa was a fisherman, this is not a big deal. You sleep on your canoe. But today, unfortunately, we have to build proper houses, live in them, and do other jobs other than fishing. So that is why the hardship and the pain is greater now than it was in the time of our ancestors.
Prof, this is amazing. I mean, the comments are flooding in. People are saying this is so enlightening. My mind is blown. Yes. Obed, thank you for sending me this message. My mind is, I mean, this is a lot. This is a lot. People need to hear it. Please spread the word. Tell people about Elanhub. This is what we do every day. We bring you information. We bring the best minds to get Prof out to come have this conversation. You don't know how important it is. And once again, Prof, thank you for finding the time to come share your thoughts. We are really grateful. I know you've touched.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I know you've touched on this a bit. Before we go, I'll just give you for a few more minutes, please. What should people be doing when we hear all these things? How can we help? This is about lives. We know that the government is not doing enough, and maybe we too are not doing enough. But what would you advise? What should people be doing? People living in these areas who are directly affected, those who are not affected, what should we be doing?
The stage we are in the emergency management cycle. You have the pre-emergency time. That is when you issue out the early warning. Then you have the event proper. It is assumed that if you issue the warning sufficiently and people heed your warning, that they will have taken precautions. For instance, 3 weeks ago, people were told in River State to harvest their crops if they come from that axis where this flooding has caused so much damage. That even if the crops are premature, it's better to harvest them than to leave water to wash them away. So that is something they should have also done before the flood proper. Now that the flood proper is here, what you do is to salvage. You salvage whatever the flood has affected. So if you have a house and there are important items you need to retrieve, you do so. You also protect yourself from the flood, because the flood can sweep people away. And you also take precaution not to allow yourself into flood-prone areas, knowing that it could be a very dangerous ride. Now, after that, the next thing will be recovery. After salvaging, the next thing is recovery. After recovery, the next thing is relief. So what can people do? those who are affected will need relief. They will need relief. And the agency in Nigeria that deals with that is the National Emergency Management Agency. By the law establishing NEMA, every state is supposed to have what is called SEMA, State Emergency Management Agency, but in Rivers State, we don't have it. We don't have SEMA in Rivers State. So that is what should happen. You have NEMA, then you should have a counterpart body in SEMA, so that that body will now begin to look at available resources like the 1 billion that the state government donated. Individuals too can donate, you know. Then the military and paramilitary should be mobilized to these areas. They are called civil preparedness forces. The civil preparedness forces are the Red Cross, the Nigerian Army, Navy, military generally, the police, even road safety. Road safety should be mounted somewhere, say at a Ahoda. And if you're a traveler, they will tell you, please don't go further. Ahead of you, the road is inundated or flooded. Go back. That is a rule, you know. So people should now put in that last stage of it to manage the casualties or the people who have suffered from this flood and give them relief and give them opportunity to rebuild their life for the future.
We can go on and on. I think that's the amazing thing about talking to academics. I don't think that the government or people really know how important people in your line of work are. I mean, listen to how you've broken everything down. The comments are endless. People are saying, you've answered all their questions. Somebody called me up, somebody who is really, really educated, like a professional engineer called me and said, come, what did they cause flood itself? Today you have resolved it. You don't know what you've done. And I thank God for platforms like this and many others who are doing the Lord's work, giving us information. The government needs to listen and we have to pile it on. Prof, you have access, you know people. You are in those spaces where these conversations are had. Talk to them, to reach out to you and your boys to come resolve issues. This is the part where I'm going to introduce. I mean, we're going to talk about politics a bit before you leave. In the next 5 minutes, you have the solution. Why are you not running for office?
Oh, let me tell you, you must have a calling to succeed in politics. Let me also tell you that as a student, I was an activist. In fact, the remnants of that still shows on my face. Those scattered beard you see there is something we grew up with. We thought we could change Nigeria. We thought we could change the society and in fact the world because as an activist, I try to look at the relationship between Nigeria and the world, the relationship between myself and my community. And I saw a lot of opportunity to make things, to do things differently. But unfortunately, politics as they play it in Nigeria, politics is dirty everywhere, but that of Nigeria is beyond being dirty. It is crooked and very hard. It is the hardest thing to do in Nigeria. And I couldn't keep up with the requirements of it because when you continue to do it and you're doing it with a clean hands, you may not be allowed to go very far. People who are very close to you will persuade you not to. I was once active in a political process in 1998, and I went somewhere to speak on a political gathering. Somebody asked me, do you own a dog? I said, yes. Is your house fenced? He said, yes. He said, you're a British type. You don't fit into this place. Go home. So I went home. This happened in Port Harcourt. So yeah.
We need to really talk about this politics thing a bit more because yes, I've heard you, but I'm not quite satisfied with that response because I mean, think about we need people with solutions. You see what's happening around the country. 2023 is here, and the conversations are out there. We're looking for leaders who will solve problems. We don't just want leaders for leaders' sake, and you know this. So I'm going to ask you my next question with respect to politics. I know that you have people in government, you have people serving in the current administration, you know all these people, but tell me, come 2023, who are you voting for?
Well, that's a very easy question. It is very easy because we all know how we got to where we are. We know that Nigeria have never been the best place to be, but today we also know that it is one of the worst places to be. At least we are now the poverty capital of the world. So somebody in my position and with the level of enlightenment I have should be able to sit down, x-ray all the factors that brought us here, x-ray all the candidates. Since I am not contested and I can't vote for myself, I have to vote for somebody. The only good thing is that when you are compelled, as you have tried to do to me now, it will be silly to, to come publicly and say this is how it is. Because I am not in politics, I'm not campaigning for anybody. If I say anything beyond what I've just said, it amounts to campaigning for somebody. Nobody deserves it yet.
Okay, I mean, Prof, you are so, that's why they describe you as an enigma. I mean, as soon as I asked the question, the immediate composure was like you were going to say something, and then you just went like that. This conversation can go on and on. I've had an amazing time. I know that people leaving all these chats, they're really, Prof, please. Somebody has a question. The person says, Prof, please. People like you with sound knowledge of important things like this are persons we need to help us in government. You see, I'm not the only one saying this. So I'm not the only one saying this. Somebody else is here saying, please, how can we continue these conversations? People need to be aware. Don't worry, Obed. Prof is now Elan. I'll be dragging him out here. Please, at least he can come share his thoughts and enlighten and educate. This has been a powerful classroom. And to show how important it is. Normally, when we have these events, sometimes you see network. Even network today behaved itself. This is amazing. This is amazing.
We thank God.
We have been having this conversation with the amazing enigma, Professor Precious Nwobidi, EDE of the River State University. He is a man with multiple caps. I'm not talking about red, white, and green anymore. I'm talking about real stuff. He is a professor. He's a lecturer. He's a consultant. I can't finish. But thank you so much, Prof, for showing up. We are really excited. I'm sure everyone who goes to watch this will find that this 1 hour is really, really worth it. Thank you so much for coming. Any final words for your people? Hello, Prof. Any final words?
Hello, sorry. It went off very briefly. So thank you so much, Sarah. It has been a pleasure being with you in the last 1 hour. I hope that some other time we can have this topic or any other topic that is of interest to your viewers. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prof. Everybody, you've heard, Prof said if it's this topic or any other topic, so expect me to come knocking very soon. Thank you so much for joining this conversation, everyone. We're really grateful. This has been an Elanhub conversation. Remember, please follow us across platforms. Follow us on YouTube. Visit our website for news every day. Everything you need, you find on www.elanhub.net. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram. Follow us everywhere. This has been interesting. Thank you so much, Professor EDE. Thank you for showing up.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
For everyone who's been with us from beginning to end, we are grateful. Have an amazing evening. God bless you.